mean, we've seen this, right? Nobody is exempt from challenge, from adversity, from obstacles. We all have it in our life. It's going to come sooner or later. That's what the 41 life is, though. Overcoming those challenges, overcoming those obstacles as they come at us and coming out stronger on the other side. So that's what we're here for. That's what we're about. We want to provide encouragement. We want to help people to keep going through those times, and we want to have some fun along the way. This is the 41 life. Let's get into it. All right, everybody. We are rolling with episode 2. Yep. Good to have you guys as always. We're excited you joined us again. That means episode 1 must have not been too bad, so we appreciate y'all. This is David.
And this is Devin.
And this is the 41 life. Hope everybody had a good week leading up to this. It was a pretty busy one for us.
Feels like every week is busy, but
yeah.
for the week that's not busy and it hasn't come yet.
Yeah. One thing they don't tell you when you're a small business owner is you don't really get any days off. So I feel like Devin's just, especially this time of the year with the weather changing, cooling down,
we're going into busy season and I can definitely feel it.
Yes. And to pair with that, I'm coaching a high school team and have some other stuff going on. We finished up my last expected round of treatment, and I have a scan coming up Monday. Yeah. So by the time this comes out after the recording, we'll kind of know what we're looking at and be able to give you guys a bit of an update.
And I feel like scan time is always very nerve-wracking.
Yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're used to it.
Yeah. It's I don't know that you ever get fully used to it. I don't think I've been sleeping so great.
The heaviness is there.
Yeah. But we're hoping for, some good results. This could potentially be the first clear scan that we've gotten. So
we're hoping
we're excited to hopefully be able to report some good news next week. But in the meantime, we at least get to report that fall's here and we're enjoying some nice weather. This is probably my favorite time of the year because I sweat way too much in the summer, and the winter times can be a little depressing. So this is kind of the sweet spot.
I just love the change of a season. Like every season is my favorite season when it's first starting.
Yeah. It also helps that college football is here. Not just college football. We have NFL football that kicked off this past weekend. So I don't think you care so much about that.
I mean, I love the snacks and I love the family time. Yeah. So, I'm here for that.
Yeah. I love all that too, but I also like seeing a bunch of dudes just go out and hit each other and compete. It's kind of fun to watch. So yeah, but that's, I would say, pretty much where we're at right now. Everything summed up. Little bit of craziness, but I feel like that's kind of par for the course.
And we're going to see Dierks Bentley this weekend, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, that's something we've been looking forward to for a while.
I feel like he is a very underrated songwriter.
Yeah, we had a whole discussion about this.
I feel very passionate about that.
Yes.
Taylor Swift gets a lot of credit. She's an amazing songwriter, but in my mind, he's like right under her.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty high praise.
And that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
So
that's a bold take. You heard it here first. You're not wrong though. He is excellent, and I think it'll be. And Lee Brice is opening for him, so it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll just be good to get out, hear some good music, have a good time,
take our minds off of the scan.
Yeah. So we'll report back and let everybody know how it was, I guess.
Yep.
But well, last week when we left you guys, we left off at kind of a turning point in the storyline, the Colorado game, the infamous Colorado game, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like what makes it infamous, I guess, as you say, you almost need to hear it like from my perspective.
Yes, definitely.
Because you were just going about your business per usual, enduring it as you do.
Yeah. It was I am excited because I've heard about it. Obviously we've talked a lot about this over the years, but I feel like every time you tell it, there's new aspects that I hear from outside perspectives that I didn't realize were going on at the time. And it's always interesting because, like you said, I was just carrying on, quite literally trying to survive and not pass out on the mound. and I knew how I felt, but I didn't think anybody else felt that way, or noticed anything going on. So it's always interesting to hear, nothing gets past people around you, especially like we talked about last week. Wives know best. They
Yeah.
see everything. They know everything.
Yeah. So this game in particular, I think this was the first game since you had gotten with Miami that I wasn't watching it in person.
Mhm.
And I mentioned last week that like I was on you about going to the doctor and like I had noticed things and I was worried about you and I think something that I didn't mention is that my family was also worried about you watching you on TV. Like,
Yes.
my mom had texted me a couple times saying that you didn't look like yourself. I had a friend text me and ask, like, if you had lost weight, and so, like, other people were seeing this. But I was visiting some of my high school girlfriends, we were just having, like, a little weekend, so I wasn't with you. You flew to Colorado for the game, and there was a smoke warning because of the wildfires going on in California at the time.
Yeah, that was chaos. Like, that was
So,
crazy.
high altitude and smoke did not help your situation whatsoever.
Correct.
But we were watching the game and they had you start because sometimes, they have relievers start the game. I guess they call it an opener.
Yeah, well, in that situation, we going into the series, we knew kind of how we were going to approach the first couple games, but didn't necessarily know for the third game because I think we had a starter that was hurt at the time, but he might be back, he might not. It depended kind of how things shook up. I just found out, I think the night before, maybe even the day of, that I was going to be starting, or opening. I don't. There's a lot of things for it, but
Yep.
basically the goal was for me to go out. We were going to pretty much have a bullpen day, and I was I was tasked, I guess, with going, anywhere from 1 to 3 innings just to kind of get us going and started. And like Devin said, there was a huge smoke warning. I got a hit on that. I mean, that was one of the weirdest things that I've ever experienced. Like you said, there were wildfires going on in California, and they were so bad that there was a warning pretty much through Denver saying, don't go outside. I mean, like it looked like it was foggy, but it was the middle of the day and it smelled like, smoke, because that's exactly what it was. And so that was on,
It's so crazy that it traveled all that way.
yeah, and that was on Saturday when we, got that warning, and it carried into Sunday, but it was so weird in the middle of the day. It felt like it was almost nighttime.
Hmm.
It also was a little concerning knowing that the whole city was being told not to be outside, and we were doing a high level athletic competition, but the show must go on. But yeah, so keep going, keep
Okay,
going.
so yeah, this is my first game watching you on TV and not in person with you playing in Miami. And obviously, like, I could see you a lot better because the camera's like right zoomed in on your face. And I remember sitting next to my best friend Steph, and she was like, "Is he okay?" And I was like, "No, he's not." Like, I've been saying that for a while, and I was like, "But he like looks really bad." And then I think this was National League, so you had to bat because pitchers bat, or they used to. That's not a thing anymore, is it?
No, well, now there's just a universal DH, but that
Yeah.
was before that rule change. So
Yeah, so you were batting, and I just remember like you standing in the batter's box, and it just looked like you were literally fighting to like stay conscious.
yeah, and I was,
Yeah.
quite literally, I was.
I mean, your face, like you were white as a ghost, like you just looked lifeless. And shortly after that, my mom called me and she was freaking out, and my dad was freaking out. And he was like, "If you don't get him to go to the doctor, like I'm coming up there, I'm going to take him to the doctor." Like we were in full freak out mode because of the way that you looked.
Yeah,
And I think it was a combination of your situation of not knowing at the time that you had cancer and the smoke and the high altitude. I mean, it was scary to watch.
it was a lot. And I was also hearing this from, I think you were probably hearing it from my family, but I was hearing it from my family and some of my friends too. Like some of my close friends were trying to be nice about it, but also kind of pushing. I don't know if like you guys had talked, or just across the board there was a lot of concern, and
Hmm.
you know
Well,
it,
me and your mom were always texting the whole time that you're
right,
playing, so
right,
I'm sure
yeah,
we talked about it. I don't remember, but I'm sure we did.
yeah, yeah. And it just I mean, I remember when they told me in that game that I was going to be starting. I remember the first thought, typically you're excited in those situations because you get to go pitch in a big league game. That's awesome, of course everybody would want to do that. I remember thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? Like literally, how am I going to go out and not just get guys out, because at that point I was trying to pitch. And I mean, it was to the point where, the Friday and Saturday, like I couldn't even finish my conditioning. And I know everybody listening to this is like, well, how did you not know something was wrong? And again, I'm very, very stubborn.
Well,
Probably.
and you think like that's not gonna happen to me.
Right.
Like you just think it's not gonna happen to you. It's hard to come to terms with that.
Yeah. Well, and so, I just kept going,
And
just kept on keeping on.
I think I told you this after, but when I got home, because I flew back to Greenville after that, and I was so just like anxious and upset
Hmm.
that I went to Target to go shopping and I like couldn't even shop for what I was shopping for. I just did laps around Target
Yeah.
because I just knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
Like I just felt it so strongly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that was well, and at the time, we didn't know the extent of everything. We just knew that I was struggling. We knew I was dropping weight. We knew I was having a hard time breathing, all this stuff. So, I went out and performance-wise, I did terrible. I mean, I I genuinely think that might have been, if not the worst game of my well, the game we'll get to here in a couple minutes probably was the worst game, but this was probably, I
Not a
would
good
say,
time, not a
second
good time.
worst. Yeah, it was bad, but, we got done, and I pretty much at this point, I'd been pitching okay the couple weeks leading up to it, but, I mean, I think my ERA, like, tripled from that game. I think that well, and really where it started in that game when I knew something was really, really wrong, I had a runner on first base, 1 out, and there was a ground ball to second base, or first base, excuse me, and the first baseman had to go over and basically get it, and I had to cover first. I could not run to first base. I couldn't get there in time, so that guy was safe. I ended up giving up a 2-run home run in the first inning, and then I gave up like 4 or 5 more runs in the second inning, and I don't even think I made it out of the second. Yeah, it was really bad. So, now we're at the point where physically things are going bad. Mentally, things are not going very well because I just got absolutely crushed. And then I'm wondering, do I have any type of job security because of everything going on? All these factors start coming together, and my performance continues to go downhill. I have a couple more outings, and then I end up getting DFA'd.
Mhm.
For those who don't know what that is, being DFA'd is pretty much you've not had good job performance and you get fired. That's essentially what it is. And there's a whole lot of logistics that go with it, like we talked about last week, but at the end of the day, that's pretty much what it boils down to. And I had the option after I got DFA'd to choose free agency and, pick where I wanted to go, or I could accept an assignment to AAA with Miami at the time. And I ended up electing free agency. And pretty much the second that I elected free agency, Tampa called and said, "Hey, we come on back here. Like we want you to come back." So right where last episode we're talking about being in Durham, we were
Mhm.
right back
You're
in
right
Durham
back there.
afterwards.
It wasn't as sweet this time.
No, there was a lot more baggage, I guess, that came with it,
Yeah.
but there were some other teams as well that we heard from during that time, and I had already signed with Tampa to go back there, but it was a little bit reassuring to see that teams are still interested, and everybody has tough stretches the same way you have good stretches, and so to see that teams are able to look past that and see what lies a little bit further beneath is good.
And I
But
think at this point I had convinced you're going to go to the doctor when the season ended.
yes, we had
You
agreed to that.
finally were like, "Okay, I'm gonna go,
Yeah.
but let me finish the season."
Yeah. Well, because I didn't know what I could do in season necessarily either. It
Yeah.
wasn't this wasn't a very, like, cut and dry normal situation where you could just go and,
Mhm. And I
get a
think
prescription and move forward.
when you got back to Durham, your first outing there was not good.
Yeah. Well, at that point too, I hadn't pitched in a little while, and I remember they were trying to figure a game for me to get in just to kinda get going again, and I think it was in Charlotte, my
Yeah.
first game, and I ended up coming in with, like, I don't know, like I think it was like the ninth inning or something like that, extra innings or something like. And I all year had pitched pretty well against them. I knew some guys on their team. Like I, was joking around with them actually before the game, and I ended up giving up a home run to lose the game, and that was just I feel like just the cherry on top for everything. But so at this point, we're pretty much in September, about the same time that we are right now, and for that month, I pretty much got called up and down, or I guess I went back and forth between Tampa and Durham if they needed a relief pitcher like needed an extra arm or a fresh arm, I was on that short list.
Which is a little more stressful than it was previously when you played for Baltimore and you would get optioned up
Yes.
and down because it's so confusing. But every player has 3 option years, and you had used all of those up, and an option years when you can go up and down freely in an organization. So when you got called up and DFA'd, all the teams got their chance to pick you up.
Yeah,
So we had to go through that period.
you have a 3-day window, and usually it doesn't go the full 3 days. Teams, kind of know if they're going to take you or not at that point. Uh, at that point in the year, but there's a 3-day window where basically you could get claimed by any team, and we could have to go out to California, New York, Florida, like you name it. You got to be there pretty much the next day, kind of how it was with the trade with Miami. Um, so those call ups and getting DFA'd and coming back, like it was not exactly the easiest of transitions, and so I felt pretty stressed out, I would say, and so that kind of led a little bit to feeling a little bit of this could be anxiety. That's something I had heard about, from tons of people. It's such a big thing right now in the world, and so I was like, okay, well, I guess this is what that feels like. I just I'm just got to keep doing, I guess, the best I can with it, and that's that. Um, and it all, that kind of also came to a head, or really came to mind. It was the first time I got called up twice in September with Tampa, and the first time I got called up, both times were pretty crazy. The first time I got called up, though, I actually ended up. I think I must have gotten, I don't know, overheated in the shower or something like that that
That's what you
triggered
thought.
this.
Yeah.
But I ended up, and I don't know that I've really ever said this publicly, but I ended up actually like passing out in the shower and woke up, and I was like on the floor of the tub in the hotel shower and had no idea what had happened or how I got there. Um,
Yeah, and I wasn't with you, and you called me, and you were like, "I don't want to scare you, but
yeah,
I did just pass out."
yeah,
And I was like, "Oh my god."
yeah, and again, I at the time I doing research, trying to figure out what was going on, not even thinking about the fact that this could be caused by something else. I thought that I had just had a panic attack because with everything that we had been going through in the last few weeks, couple months, whatever, I thought that there was just a ton of stress that was going on, and so that's kind of what on the phone we chalked it up to that. We are like, okay, well, I need to go, and I guess I need to talk to somebody about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And I ended up going and seeing somebody and sitting down and talking to him, and got put on anxiety medicine, which
It's
looking
kind of
back
funny to
now,
think about because that
yeah,
did not do
yeah.
anything.
And I'm sure that there were some benefits to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very low dosage. It was, a lot more trying to figure out what was going on and get a grip on everything.
We were
Um,
just so off the mark
yeah, well, yeah,
trying to address
yeah,
the issue.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty much trying to put out a bonfire with a cup of water, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't think we were ever really gonna make too much major progress with that. So that happened the first time I got called up, and the second time was one of the craziest. And I love telling this story because it's so, looking back now, it's just quite literally a wild ride.
Yeah.
Um, it was when I got called up to Boston, and we love Boston. That's one
That
of
is our favorite
yeah,
place to
yeah.
go.
We that was
I
always like
love Fenway. I love Boston. Like my dream was for you to get traded there because I
yeah.
just love it.
Yeah, for some reason, I always had bad outings in Boston. I mean, I don't know if it's the fans, if it was, something about Fenway, but it always did me in. But, we're always excited to go there. And so I get called at probably midnight. And, before I left the field that day, our manager said, "Hey, keep your phone on you. There's a chance like it's gone into extra innings tonight. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know your name's been tossed around. Just be prepared, for a long night." I was like, okay. And so the game gets over. I end up getting that phone call. It's probably midnight, 12:30, and at this point, I'm staying in just a hotel, so I have to pack up, my suitcases, run by the field, get my baseball bag the next day. And this is kind of the same thing as the trade, where it was a 1 o'clock game in Boston.
Yeah, you called me. I wasn't with you for some reason. I was back
Yeah,
in Greenville, and you were like, "Hey, you got to be in Boston by noon tomorrow."
yeah,
And it
yeah.
was like midnight, and I was like, "Okay."
Yep. So Devin booked the plane ticket and she, got rolling with that. And I got my flight information. I think the flight was at like 9 or 10 o'clock. It was going to be a tight squeeze, but because it was so last minute, that was really, there weren't many flights going from Durham to Boston.
And
Um,
I got there in perfect time.
yeah, you did. That was fantastic. So again, another sleepless night. I know I'm probably pitching that day. I'm psyching myself up. I'm ready to go. Like, okay, we just gotta get through the day. Like, go out there and just take care of business. So get to the airport, check my bags in. Everything's good. I'm sitting in the terminal, flight boards. Everything's moving perfect, no issues. I've done this before, especially with Baltimore. There were a lot of up and down, back and forth. So you just kind of get acclimated to it a little bit. And we're sitting there at this point for probably 30 minutes, not taking off, haven't heard a word. Nobody knows what's going on or why. And finally, like after we've been sitting there for probably 45 minutes or an hour, meanwhile, this is a 1 o'clock game. This is now we're at the point, it's probably 10:45, and it's like a 2 hour flight to Boston. So I'm starting to get a little stressed and crunching numbers in my head. And I'm like, I don't think I can get there for this game. This is not good. And if this flight doesn't take off in the next, 10 minutes and they don't tell us something. So the pilot comes on and basically says, hey guys, I don't know what's going on with this plane. It just won't start. We're like, okay, that's good. So we have to now deboard the plane. And we have like, they said, we'll make a decision in 10 minutes whether or not we can get this fixed. And so now it's 11 o'clock. I call our travel secretary and I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. And I don't know what to do. And he's starting to kind of get a little concerned, like, crap, like, how are we going to get this guy here? Like, what are we going to do? So 11:15 or so, we get told this bird's not leaving. It is sitting right here. And we're like, okay, what do we do? There was one more flight at 11:40. So I have 20 minutes to somehow get my bags, get across the airport. Fortunately, it's not a huge airport, but get across the airport and somehow just try to de-stress on this flight. So I go to get my bags and everything, and they told me there was nothing they could do. They were like, we cannot get your bags off this plane. I still to this day don't know why. So I'm freaking out at this point. I'm losing my mind. And there's a guy
Because
who
it's
was,
your baseball bag.
yeah,
Like,
and my luggage.
yeah, but who cares about the luggage? You
Yeah,
need your glove and your cleats and your
yeah,
uniform.
yeah.
And
I mean, the essentials
we
to
can
go.
buy some toothpaste, but
Yeah,
like,
that's true. The things that you need to go and pitch in a baseball game are on the plane, and there's nothing I can do, and I'm very helpless, and I'm supposed to be in Boston in 2 hours for a game. And there was a guy that was rehabbing who was also going up to Boston. I think I think he had finished his rehab assignment and was, or maybe getting I don't know. Either way, his flight was the same one that I was now on. And so he's checking in and says, hey man, like, is everything okay? I said, no, it is not okay. We are having a very long morning. And I told him about it. And he was like, man, hang in there.
you were
Well,
freaking out,
yeah, I
which
was,
understandably so.
I felt very helpless. I just, there was nothing I could do. And so I just kind of threw my hands up and I was like, just, God, just please give me something here. I just need a little help. Please let something happen. And I don't know that maybe but once or twice this has ever happened, like in the baseball world. Like most people don't know who I am unless you know me personally. Like I'm not going to be recognized. I'm not a recognizable face really. Um, but this guy who worked in the baggage claim area came over. He was like, hey man, are you David Hess? I was like, yeah. He's like, man, I've loved watching you pitch for the Bulls this year. You've done so well. Like, I know I probably am not supposed to ask this, but like, are you getting called up? I said, well, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but yeah. And my bag is actually on a plane that was supposed to take off. And I'm kind of in like this tough situation right now. He said, man, I got you. What flight was it? Tell me this and tell me that. And I was like, okay, here, this is everything. He's like, okay, I'll be back in a couple minutes. This man, I still to this day, like this is, I think maybe an angel sent straight from God.
He was an angel.
He went on to the plane, got my bag, got and not just mine. I think he got one or two other people's bags who were also not baseball related, but were trying to get on a different flight and in a time crunch. He got like 5 bags for just random strangers. And, that was like just enough time basically for me to run across the airport. I looked like a fool running because I have this giant, baseball bag. Like these are like full size suitcase size bags. They're huge. And I have that, and I have my backpack, and I have my normal suitcase, just my luggage. And so I get across the airport, get checked in. I mean, they are literally saying, "Last call, Mr. Hess, if you're out there, you need to board this plane right now." And I mean, we get on just in the nick of time. And so we finally we get in the air. We're good. But problem is, now I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, "Oh no, this is not good. Like this is now 11:30. I'm not even supposed to land until 1:30, and the game is at 1 o'clock." So I just somehow try to shut my brain off, say, "Okay, we'll figure this out as we go. I guess everything will work out. It'll be okay." And I put my phone on airplane mode, kind of shut my brain off for a little bit. I don't know, watch Netflix or something just to try to, de-escalate the tension that's in my head at this point. And we finally get to the point where we're about to land, and we get down, flip my phone off airplane mode. I have texts and calls and all this stuff coming in. And so our travel secretary, like I have like 10 messages from him basically saying, "Call me as soon as you get this. Call me, please give me an update what's going on." And there was no Wi-Fi on this flight. I don't know why, but there was no Wi-Fi, so I couldn't update him as we were going. And so I call him pretty much right when we land. I'm like, "Hey, this is 1:30. They are in the game. They have started. They are in, I think, the first or second inning at this point." I look at the score. It was not going well for either team. It was a high scoring affair from the beginning. And even more so, the reason why I was like, "Okay, well, I'm definitely pitching today, and this is going to be crazy." And get on the phone with the travel secretary, and he's like, "Hey, just get down to baggage claim as quick as you can. We have a plan. They know you're coming. Just be ready for them and grab your bags as quick as you can and just go with them." I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know who them is." He was like, "You'll know. You'll know when you see them." I was like, "Okay." And so, like I said, there was another guy who was with me, and he also was like, "What do we do? What's going on?" Because usually you just get like an Uber or something to the field. Like you get there in somewhat of a timely manner to where you can kind of get going with that. But I get to baggage claim, I grab my bags, and I'm still looking around, and I'm like, I don't know who I'm looking for. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right here. And then this, I mean, just straight out of Boston, police officer comes over. He's like, "Are you Mr. Hess?" I said, "Yes, sir." And at this point, I didn't know if I was getting arrested. I didn't know the way that day had gone. There was no telling what was going to happen. And he was like, "All right, you're going to be with me. And are you the other guy? Yeah. Okay. You're going to be with me too. You got your bags. You're good." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so. Like, what are we doing?" And he was like, "Well, I got to get you to the field." I was like, "Okay." And we go out. There's a police escort. There's 3 cars, and we get in the lead car. And I mean, Boston PD just came through like crazy on that day because it should be probably especially with traffic, it should be a 30-minute drive at least to get to the stadium. We got there in 7 minutes, and I have never seen anybody drive so impressively, but also so terrifyingly as this officer did. And it was, to this day, like one of the craziest experiences because I mean, in the front seat, our bags are stuffed in the back. I have, the other guy in the back seat, and I mean, we're going. We are fly. I mean, we
And what's
even
so crazy is that one thing about me is I like to roll up around the third or fourth inning because when you go to a baseball game every night, well, just me personally, it's a lot.
It's a
So
lot of
I like to.
innings.
I feel like baseball should be 7 innings. I'm not going to get into that.
That's a different story. Another
That's
conversation for
another
another day.
conversation. But I like to roll up late. And it's so funny because I was just taking my time, like, strolling to the game. I decided to walk from the hotel and I like see this police officer absolutely zooming past with his lights on. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on there? Like something serious is happening. Like he's going so fast. And then later when you told me about it, I was like, oh my gosh, like you drove right past me. Like you were in there.
Yeah, it was definitely us, and I mean, you can't script that stuff out. And like Devin's, I mean, they dropped us off right there as close as they could, and it was packed. I mean, like if anybody's been to a game at Fenway, like outside the stadium, there's tons of people walking around. It's busy. I still don't know how they even got us there to begin with, but I rush into the clubhouse. I mean, I hadn't eaten all day at this point either because I hadn't had time, so I'm starving. I think I get like a granola bar or something just to have a little bit of substance in my stomach. And they're like, "Hurry, hurry, hurry! You got to get out there! Like they might need you right now." And at this point, I mean, it's probably 2 or 2:30, so we're in the third, fourth inning, and again, it was a high scoring game. So thankfully, like that gave a little bit of a cushion time wise to actually get there before we were too deep in it. But I went out, got dressed, and said hey to the manager just to let him know that I was there. And they were actually making a pitching change. I remember Nathan Evaldi was coming out of the game in like the fourth inning or something like that. And they're like, you got to get to the bullpen. So I run down to the bullpen in between innings. And
They had the camera on the guy warming up,
yeah,
and my grandma sent me a video of you running across the field in the background to the bullpen.
yeah, and at this point, the fans had kind of caught wind of me running across the field and actually started booing me. So that's always fun when you're in Boston and those fans. I mean, they're probably the most intense.
They're
Like,
very passionate,
yeah, very
which is
passionate.
what makes the game so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But they are very, very passionate fans. And so they will make sure to let you know wherever they can what's going on. And so, anyway, I get down to the bullpen and, it's not a climactic finish. I ended up not pitching that night. So, all
All
that.
that for nothing.
All that I got to kind of decompress that night. And I remember we got back to the hotel and I was telling Devin about like just everything that had happened that day. I was like, I'm just so glad that I'm here, but thank God I didn't pitch today because I don't think that would have been good at all. I did, however, end up pitching the next day, and it made me wish that I had pitched that game because it was, I would say, when I could go back and watch video and say, wow, that's not the guy that I am. Like, very clearly, I had been working on a new pitch. At the time, I was working on a cutter. And I remember, like, seeing it back on video later on and just thinking how, like, even in a bullpen at my worst, it wasn't even as bad as it was in that game. My velocity was down. I just looked back. Like there was everything that the Colorado game was and how much of a turning point that was. This game in Boston was pretty much just like sealed the deal of something is really wrong. And
And
not
I
only
feel
can
like
it,
when you're pitching in a major league game, like there's a certain amount of adrenaline,
yes,
and I don't think your body could handle the adrenaline.
I don't know that it could produce the
Maybe
adrenaline.
that's what it was.
um,
But your body was not cooperating with you at a major league level at that
Yeah,
time.
I don't think it wasn't cooperating with me on any level, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I mean, leading up to that point, I was having to work with trainers basically to just get to the point where I could even go out and play catch and pitch and be ready on a daily basis. I could hardly do my conditioning. Like I said, when I was in Tampa and, I thought that it was a panic attack, it was not a panic attack. And we know that now. But at the time, there was just so much going on that after that game in Boston, it was a night game. And I remember I got DFA'd after the game, which probably no matter how well I did or didn't pitch was probably going to happen just from a roster uh, necessity standpoint. But we were walking home, and I remember like that really started some very deep conversations. Kind of like, I mean,
Do we want to still do this?
yeah,
It
it,
was just beating us up.
yeah, and I mean, I'm typically a very positive, optimistic person, and I feel like that game was kind of internally the game that I would say like kind of broke my will a little bit.
I feel like for me, like the lifestyle is like super difficult, but I was always able to do it because I knew it was your dream. And at the time, I obviously didn't know that you were sick, so I thought that maybe your body just wasn't able to handle baseball anymore, but it wasn't something that I was going to say. Like, I never wanted to be the one to say, like, should you stop?" Like, I was never gonna be the one to say that. So when you finally said it out loud, I was like, "Okay, yeah, like, let's have a conversation," because I had been feeling that way.
Yeah.
Just because it was so hard on both of us, and I thought you were having anxiety attacks. I thought you were dealing with anxiety, and I was like, "This is not worth it if this is what it's doing to you mentally."
Right.
So that is when we really started having, like, some deep conversations about what's next.
Yeah, and that was really, I mean, discouraging too because at that point I had worked for so long. I mean, so much of my life and my energy and like, just a huge desire of mine since I was a kid was to play baseball at a high level. I mean, still to this day, it's like one of the things that I love the most. And so to have that not going well and not really having answers, but just knowing that everything isn't making sense and trying to figure that out is stressful in itself. Um, but, like Devin said, that did lead to a lot of conversations. And at this point, we're starting to approach the end of the season, but there's still a little bit of time left and a little bit of chaos left that happened during that time. So next week with you guys, we're going to pick up right there. We'll dive more into what these conversations look like. We'll talk about this last little stretch of the season and then going into the off season when we do get answers and we do figure out more of what's going on. If you guys didn't know, then spoiler alert, it is cancer. So there will be more explanation
We
on
like
that.
to make jokes.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll pick right up there next week. We still got a lot of interesting stuff, or a lot of story left to go with this. I feel like we've kind of hit the tip of the iceberg. But we really enjoy getting to be here with you guys and share this story. We're really happy that you guys have tuned in with us. One thing that really helps us and that we really want to do is just to get our story out there, to be encouragement, to be helpful for people. So if you guys are enjoying this along the way, if this has been helpful to you in any way, please share with friends. A word of mouth is huge. Ratings and reviews are huge. Like we've said before, interact with us on social media, leave some comments. I really want to engage with you guys as much as possible. I want to answer questions and cool stuff that you guys may want to know. Feel free to reach out to us. We're here. But on that note, we'll pick up next week again where we left off, and we're excited to continue with you guys. But this has been the 41 Life. I'm David.
And I'm Devin, and we'll see y'all next week.
That's right.